with Jon Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, everybody? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the Fantasy Time NBA DFS Playbook Show. It is Friday. We have 11 games on the DraftKings main slate. James, you did the playbook today. You did all the research. I just kind of tagged along, followed along, and I'm ready to do a great show with you here to close out the week. How are we doing, my friend?
Hell yeah. Happy Friday, John. First Friday, first TGIF of the first TGIF drop. The first TGIF drop of the year. Doing good, fun slate, I think, to round out the work week. Lot of star power, lot of mid-tier plays. I think you and I discussed it on the podcast this morning, and it's something that we're going to probably navigate through. It's going to get crazier as the season picks up, but the value today is kind of where things lack, and I think we're going to definitely have to take a stand on some guys throughout the slate. Whether that's good or whether that's bad, we will see, but not your like clear-cut value. We don't have like all too much injury news. There's obviously some key guys like Darius Garland, Cameron Johnson, Anthony Simons, like all those guys could obviously open up the slate a little bit more if they were to be ruled out. But as of right now, like the value that we have is what it kind of is. It's not like the best value that we're going to have of the year, obviously, but it should be a fun slate nevertheless.
Fun slate, nevertheless, indeed. Anytime you get 11 games here, again, you have the player pool, you have our rostership projections out on Fantasy Alarm, you have our DFS daily projections out on Fantasy Alarm. You can kind of dive in, use our lineup generator there, and really optimize, how you want to go about differentiating your lineup builds on these big slates. Obviously, last night we saw on the 2-game slate, we some very high concentrated rostership numbers on the chalky plays. When you look at tonight, it's a much different feeling than it was on Wednesday, where despite it being a huge slate, we saw 70% of the field on Evan Mobley. We saw 70% of the field on Jaren Jackson Jr., on Obi Toppin. Like, there were some very clear, industry and community plays when it came to where people were going with their lineups on Wednesday. It feels like this slate certainly has some of its obvious chalky plays, and we're going to break those down here. But I do find like we could probably go a couple of different directions with the way some of this rostership has been spread out.
Yeah, I agree. And I like it like that. I don't like seeing 6 guys in my lineup 75% on. So yeah, I think I like the distribution, the way it seems to be playing out. So let's dive into it. I already see some questions popping in. Our boy Faisal in chat. Faisal, what's going on, bro? And we will address that when we get into the position by position breakdown.
Yep.
We just mentioned he's downgraded to questionable, and we will talk about how that shapes out. I think that's something you and I should do more this year is like, players that are questionable. What is the pivots if players are ruled out? Is there, viability to using these players if they actually play, like the leverage, all that good stuff. So we'll get into it, Faisal, in a second when we get into our positional breakdown.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously that's something we do. You have it in the playbook as well. You list out the injuries and guys to take note of as we go into the slate. Let's just jump into it here, James. When we're talking game totals and spreads, everybody is going to be paying attention to that late night hammer matchup tonight. Golden State Warriors going up against the Sacramento Kings. We know it's got a total that approaches 240 here this evening. What other spreads and totals are we looking at on tonight's slate that maybe is worthy of a game stack?
So there's a couple interesting ones. Brooklyn, Dallas, and you talked about it yesterday. I believe it was the Lakers Suns game where the line moved like 5 points. Well, this line has moved 5 points. Opened at actually you talked about the line. This is just the over under. It opened at 226 in Brooklyn, Dallas. And right now it's 230.5 to 231 everywhere. So, I think we're realizing Dallas is not a very good defensive team, and Brooklyn's without their potential defensive player of the year candidate in Nicholas Claxton. So definitely offense expected in that game. Interesting to see Houston, San Antonio dip. It's opened at 228.5. Now it's essentially at 225 across the industry with a lean on the under there too. So that's interesting. 226 in Detroit. Charlotte is a really good total. Charlotte 4-point favorites at home in that one. OKC Cleveland 227.5 to 228 everywhere. New York Atlanta 228.5 pretty much across the industry. And something you and I talked about on the pod, 230 that game opened at. Surprising to see a Knicks game at 230, but that is, I think, more so because the Atlanta defense was so bad and they got torched by, wait for it, Charlotte in their opener. So those are some of the totals. Toronto, Chicago, Miami, Boston, the two games sub 220 on tonight's slate. And there are some, I think, fine plays in that game, but like you talked about it, you opened the podcast with it yesterday, or maybe the live stream the other day. Like sometimes on these bigger slates, sometimes whittling down the games is the direction to go, and maybe not cross out every player from the player pool, because like obviously getting to some Boston guys, there's upside.
Yeah, playing a Porzingis or Tatum maybe makes sense tonight. On the Boston side, and you mentioned the OKC Chicago game. I mean, SGA is rather matchup proof. So even
I'll just say Cleveland.
Oh, sorry, Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland rather rather matchup proof in those spots. So not really something too concerning. When a player like him is in these slower games, he generally still manages to get his production there. Let's dive into it. We got a lot getting to. If you guys have your questions, again, feel free to throw them in the chat. Again, Faisal already threw one in there asking about the Anthony Simmons injury, downgraded to questionable. Shaedon Sharpe is someone that you and I talked about on the stream, the previous show this morning, liking him as a guy off the bench that came through with some solid production. Now, if he moves into that starting lineup, he probably gets a little bit more attention on him than he may have gotten initially as a a pivot or as a contrarian play. We're just kind of jumping into that because of the question. Simons was $6,400. Sharpe wasn't like a tremendous value off of that, if I remember, $5,300 as a shooting guard, small forward. How do you see that playing out? Would you have interest with Sharpe moving into the starting lineup at that price point?
I mean, I think there's multiple layers to this because Anthony Simons has the ultimate green light on this team. Like, would it shock you that if he led the team in scoring by year's end? It wouldn't shock me at all. Like, he was a guy who was averaging like 26 points a game without Lillard last year. So if Simons doesn't play, I definitely think there's a case to be made for Shaedon Sharpe. I definitely think the way that Malcolm Brogdon finished his second half in that,
that's the question.
Slide into the starting lineup.
Yeah, that is the one thing for me today, and we wanted to debate that a little bit with you, is that Malcolm Brogdon, for one reason or another, was considered to be damaged goods at the time of the trade from Boston, and then he just immediately cleared and was like, "No, I'm fine." The injury I had during the playoffs that everybody said was going to cost me months of the season, I'm good to go. Comes off the bench and immediately drops 20 in 22 minutes, 23 minutes here. If he's in the starting lineup tonight against Orlando, he might be the best value on the board, I think. If he starts tonight, Malcolm Brogdon, we know how great of an offensive player he is, but he also fills up the stat sheet. You give him another 7 minutes in this game, 8 minutes, 9 minutes in this game, he's playing 30, 32 minutes here. I think there's a really nice potential for him.
Where's the you are the captain, I'm the captain now meme, John?
I gotta get our gifts loaded up correctly on this studio here. So don't have it yet, but we'll have him soon.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's definitely a case to be made for Malcolm Brogdon. I'm not also, like, for what it's worth, I wouldn't overlook Scoot Henderson either, who's a point guard, made his debut. Couldn't have been a tougher spot for Scoot Henderson to make his debut. He's going up against the Clippers with two of the better perimeter defenders in the league. Even Paul George came out after the game, was like, don't judge Scoot Henderson off one game. Like, Scoot Henderson still played 36 minutes in a game that they were down 30 in the second half. So
yeah, I don't think they take him off the floor this year.
No, he's going to play 36 minutes a night. And that's why, like, Sharp is in play. Like, Simon's being out, bump to Scoot, bump to Sharp, bump to Brogdon. Truthfully, bump to Ayton, bump to Grant.
I would say Jeremy Grant for me, I think, is an interesting one because we saw how much offense he carried last year when guys were out of the lineup. Someone that's certainly not afraid to shoot the basketball. It's a matchup against Orlando, though. You look at the Orlando sort of front court here, with Wendell Carter, Paolo Banchero, and Franz Wagner. It's not the easiest of spots. No. They bring in Jonathan Isaac off the bench. We saw him have a pretty decent impact in the 11, 12 minutes that he was on the floor. I kind of feel like the guards are where I'd rather attack with the size of their guards, right? Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony kind of coming off the bench for them here. I think the guard play is where I want. And again, if we find out that Brogdon goes in or Sharp goes in, if Simmons is out there, I think all of them, as you mentioned, are going to be in play. But whomever starts is probably where I lean, for the value here.
Agreed. Only thing I would say, like, to counter the starting argument, like, if it was Brogdon starting, for sure, I'm all in. But we even saw Sharp coming off the bench behind Thibault. He played 20 minutes. Like, Thibault is going to start. He's going to do his, 20 minutes and then get off the floor regardless. Like, that's the split, seemingly, him and Sharp. So, Brogdon would become an elite value if Simons were to sit and he started. But I don't think Shaedon Sharp would be any less valuable coming off the bench. And that's
right.
Still coming up.
So that's current injury news. We'll run through a few of the other names that we're looking at here. Darius Garland, Cameron Johnson was listed as questionable here for tonight. Bones Highland. We already know Nick Claxton is out, among other names like Josh Richardson, Draymond Green, Luke Kennard, Jared Allen, just some notables there. So if we get any more news or updates for injuries while we're live here, of course, we'll bring it down. We'll break it down for you and give you our analysis and where we could go with the changes that will be going on as NBA lineup lock approaches here. But James, let's get into our positional breakdown here. We talked a little bit about point guard already. Luka Doncic is 11,400. He went for 72 fantasy points on opening night. He had a triple-double. We talked about what our current projected rostership looks like here tonight. And it seems like more people are going fair and balanced than they are stars and scrubs. Obviously, that's because there aren't too many scrubs, but spending up for Luka, spending up for Jokic doesn't feel like a play many are. It's not as chalky as we generally find on most slates.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes that has to do with size, like 22 teams in action tonight. Definitely has to do with the value. Like, outside of Day'Ron Sharp, I'm not sure you can tell me one play under 4K you're comfortable with tonight. Like, off the top of your head. I don't think, really. Outside of Sharp, there's not, one specific player like, yes, under 4K, I can also play this guy. So, I get it because it's tougher to get there, but I actually built with Luka fairly easy. That's currently the direction I went. And again, I think I picked Jokic on the podcast this morning, but I like center better. I like the center mid-tier under the value. So I ended up going Luka in my lineups. I have no problem getting there. Again, whether you're Ben Simmons defense is good. Well, he just faced a big body in Jeremy Sohan, and we saw how that worked out for him. So, I have no problem getting to Luka in any and all formats, low ownership or not. If he's not number 1A, he's 1B behind Nikola Jokic.
Yep, I'm with you there. You have SGA again against Cleveland. And, if Garland is out, maybe that makes that a little bit of a more interesting spot. I also talked in the Discord here today. We generally didn't like Cleveland because of just their two bigs, but Jared Allen being out obviously also changes the dynamic of that defense for them. If SGA is not an outside shooter, he's more of a slasher. If you're not having to compete with both Evan Mobley and Jared Allen down there, getting in the trees, maybe a little bit easier for SGA to score. And if Garland finds himself not able to suit up tonight, he did play obviously the other day, but questionable again coming into tonight. Maybe there's a case again. We're super high on Gilgeous-Alexander. I know you picked him as your long shot MVP for this season as well. So probably likely to see many more performances like we did for him on opening night. After we get below the top two guys, though, at the point guard position, Where are you finding yourself gravitating when it comes to some building lineups? We talked about Steph Curry on the show this morning and about how he only gave you 38-ish fantasy points there on opening night. Chris Paul being there, almost double-digit assists, and then you see Steph Curry with just one. If Curry is now more of a floater, a guy that kind of moves around and shoots, it's going to take a big scoring night for him to really pay off a $9,300 price tag if we're not going to get the secondary stats that we're used to out of him.
Yeah, I mean, and it was a good discussion this morning. I do think like there's going to be positive regression for him, and you even said it. You're like, that's going to be the lowest number of assists he's had all year, and I kind of agree. Now, I don't think he's going to approach like numbers he has in the past. Also, John, like 31 minutes, he was playing that in the preseason. He was in foul trouble. Like he had to come out early, I think late second quarter and early third because of foul trouble. 31 minutes. That's an extra 5 minutes, and an extra 5 minutes that's going to come against the Kings tonight, which, again, elite offense, not exactly an elite defense. I love Steph Curry tonight. John.
Yeah, we have breaking news on the Anthony Simons.
Whoa. I mean, why did we even waste time talking about what if? Like, here we are. Anthony Simons.
Hit the UCL ligament in his thumb, will have surgery, going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. So, Anthony Simons is out for tonight. So that now goes back to the conversation we have is who will start? Will it be Malcolm Brogdon? Will it be Shaedon Sharpe? Both of those guys now obviously add a little bit more value to this slate. Just kind of given the increased role. Again, there really weren't a ton of low 5K, 4K guys that we were in love with here, but obviously now that changes. And I would imagine rostership on those two players in particular are going to probably increase here as well.
Yeah, so looking at some data from the first game, and take it for what it's worth, we know Orlando is a slow-paced team. They were last year. They played at the slowest pace in the league in game number 1. And again, not really surprising to anyone. So like this is the obvious like first opening of value, right? Going to Portland and like,
and it's not even the best value. They're still over 5K, but it's just better.
Right. It's just there is things that have happened that opened up, but like it's still like not something I'm really like. I want to see the starting lineup.
I'm getting to them at $5,200.
I want to see the starting lineup. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying like, it's still like Portland's still a really bad team. This isn't going to help them at all. I know they're home and this is their home opener. And even listening to Jamal Mosley, Orlando Magic head coach, like he was like, yeah, they're going to be fired up. It's their home opener. Magic current 3-point favorites that hasn't moved. I'm not saying I'm not in on Portland, but I'm also not sitting here saying like I think they are now must have play 3 of them in my lineup. Like
no one's saying that, but we're talking about Brogdon or Sharpe here. I mean, I think both of those guys are definitely now much more in play, especially at their price tag. Sharpe was 53. Brogdon is, what do you say, 52?
And Scoot.
Again, we weren't finding a lot of guys really in that range for those positions that we loved here. So I think you'll see people gravitate towards that. It's just the way when news happens like that and opens up. Now, if Cam Johnson gets ruled out and all of a sudden Cam Thomas gets ruled in, well, now there's another $5,100 guy in that same range that maybe people probably play over a Brogdon or a Shaedon Sharpe here. But I think both of those guys now are very clearly in the player pool for sure. So side note there, obviously going back to the top price guys at point guard, talked about Steph Curry. Trae Young let us down there at his price at $9,200 this time against the Knicks. De'Aaron Fox, part of that huge game total there in the late night hammer at $8,700. If we're looking at this first half of the point guard position here, James, where are we looking?
So we talked about the Curry thing. I like Steph Curry. I think the interesting note of the day is De'Aaron Fox is the first athlete to sign with the Curry brand, and they wear a shoe. And in the video that they released, De'Aaron Fox basically said like, I can't wait to bust your ass in your shoes. And Steph, maybe like, and Steph was in the video and it was a good laugh and whatnot, but maybe Steph's going to take that a little more personally. Like doesn't want
the Jordan, and I took that personally.
Yeah, and I took that personally. So, but I do like De'Aaron Fox. I think this game environment is great. Fred VanVleet, I really like his price over on FanDuel. He's only $7,000 on FanDuel. I can definitely get there. I think
VanVleet is a current rostership darling.
Yeah,
a lot of people are looking for the bounce back here against San Antonio. Again, they got blown up by like 30 in that game against Orlando. He was 5 of 13 only. We usually think of Fred VanVleet as a guy that has the forever green light. Seeing him take just 13 shots, a little concerning. We talked about how the offense sometimes runs through Alperen Sengun as well. 6 assists for him, 5 for VanVleet. So if the ball's out of his hands a little bit more, then he's maybe not as driving as much. He did take 6 threes, but no free throw attempts for Fred VanVleet. That's not great.
Yeah, I mean the whole game was a nightmare for absolute nightmare for them. So I could definitely run it back with VanVleet. It's a really good price point. I'm not like in love with the rest of this tier. Like I think you probably get to the likes of like Chris Paul.
For me, Paul's a core play in my lineups tonight. I have him in everything I've built.
Okay.
On DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's $8,200. He's more probably a cash game play over there. But on DraftKings, where you get bonuses for the double doubles, we got gypped off the double double on night 1. They stack corrected him off of it. I'm going to go back to the double double here tonight, though. I think he comes through for us against the Kings.
To be fair to DraftKings, they actually double dip stack corrected. They stack corrected him into a double double and then stack corrected him out of a double double.
Right.
So they just like pretended like it didn't exist. But we saw it, DraftKings. We saw it. Yeah, I mean, like it's a great game environment.
He's not going to go 0 for 6 and 4 for 15 shooting again, I don't think. Right?
No, he's not. But it's also one of those things where the peripheral stats is it's like we talked about the regression in coming for Curry. Does that come at the expense of Chris Paul? Does Jonathan Kuminga likely being on the floor more because he's out of foul trouble? Does that hinder Chris Paul's rebounding ability? I'm not saying it does. I'm not saying it doesn't. I just think
Paul's always been a pretty good rebounding guard. So
sure, but if we're going to ask the question about Steph Curry, I think it's fair to ask the question about Chris Paul too. Steph Curry had 4 rebounds.
When we're talking about Curry right now, we're talking about a change in role, though. Paul isn't really changing a role for him. Curry's now playing off the ball, a guy that's running around. I mean, he always ran around because Draymond was a guy that sort of ran that offense anyways, but Curry would still give yourself a pretty good amount of assists. Seems like the offense now is running with Chris Paul in that Draymond role, as we talked about. So I'm not really too concerned about numbers dripping off for CP3 here in this spot, especially given the pace. Kings still play 0 defense. So in love with Chris Paul here this evening. Jordan Clarkson, I know it's against the Clippers here, but he came off and he's always liable to put out one of these games like he did. They're home again. 24 actual. Do we test the waters?
I mean, if he's going to start, if they're going to start that same lineup where Clarkson, THT, Markkanen, Collins, Kessler is their starting 5, sure. Him and Markkanen seem to be like the safest. Him, Markkanen, Collins seem to be this after one game, right? Seem to be the safest in terms of minutes because the rest of the rotation was a nightmare. Kessler played 22 minutes. THT played like 23. But Clarkson started and played 30. So if he's going to play 30 and have the ultimate green light, sure. I can't say I hate it, but I think the problem I would run into is I would like, especially if we got word that Cam Johnson was out, I think Ben Simmons would be someone I prioritize over Clarkson. And I'm finding myself also thinking that way about Scoot and Dennis Schroeder as well. So I think they're all like kind of in that same category for me, or like if I end up on Clarkson, Simmons, Scoot, or Schroeder, I'd be perfectly fine with it. Yeah. But
I think I would put Scoot at the end of that group. I like Schroeder a lot tonight as well. They bumped a lot of people's price tags. They didn't really do much with Dennis Schroeder here, and he's coming up from a 37 fantasy point game. What's going on with Chicago though? Like closed door meeting after game 1. Are they gonna come out a little refocused and against Toronto here, who's not supposed to be a great team by any shakes this year. How are you feeling about the Bulls?
That is a question that I do not have an answer for. No, I mean, closed door meetings are not good when they're 30 games into the year. They had them after one. So I think that says enough about how everybody feels, probably not fan or not of the team. Like there's been trade talks to begin with, and now there's rumors that DeMar DeRozan is not close to a contract extension. So there's a lot going on there. Don't like any of it.
Yep. I think there's a little bit of an issue there. I will say, speaking of closed door meetings, before the season started, the Celtics had a closed door meeting with like their core six with the coach to figure out like how they wanted their rotation to come out. They kind of discussed who would come off the bench, and Derek White said when he got a chance to talk, he said JT should be the one coming off the bench.
Totally agree.
Get Tatum off the bench for you guys. Obviously said jokingly, but just gotta love the quirks that Derek White can bring to that team. Right below Derek White pricing wise, though, is Emmanuel Quickly. I know our guy Sean Mitchell in our Discord said he liked the Quickly over points tonight over an Underdog. It was 12.5. Man came out, scored 24 in 28 minutes off the bench against Boston. They started Quentin Grimes. Grimes wasn't long for that game. Quickly was a monster for this team last year. I have no idea why they didn't pick up his rookie option.
None.
Like if you're the Knicks, don't you just try to trade him then? There's value here, I would think, right? I mean,
I believe because he doesn't get picked up, he's a restricted free agent. So
is that what? So they can just match whatever offer gets to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Quickly is tremendous. So off the bench, firecracker for him. Fills the stat sheet. Obviously, he was pretty efficient against Boston, 7 of 11. But Atlanta is not really the greatest defensive team here either. So at 5,500 in tournaments, I think Quickly is a GPP play tonight.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think he profiles best in tournaments because it's still kind of like murky situation with the rotation. DiVincenzo barely played. Hart barely played. Quentin Grimes barely played. But if Quickly's not as efficient as he was in game one, who's to say one of those other guys aren't the ones playing like 30 minutes, right? So I agree on the tournament front for Emmanuel Quickly for sure.
Where else are you going down here in this low 5K range? Anybody sticking out to you?
Low fives. I mean, obviously Brogdon forefront of our exposure here, especially if he were to draw a start. They might. I mean, who knows what they elect to do? Like he's clearly gonna be someone that's in a lot of trade conversation for the rest of the year until it happens. I know he said he's trying to just fit in where, spend his time in Portland, whatever. But I mean, he took 16 shots in 23 minutes. Like that's probably what Malcolm Brogdon's going to be. He got a big contract from the Bucks. We saw he was really good in Boston at times, coming off the bench. Like really good in Indiana. Like he's just a good player. So Brogdon 52. Another question mark is if Cam. Who the hell knows what to do with Cam Thomas? But like,
man took 21 shots and 11 free throws in 25 minutes.
Dude, it's like you're right, and like
he had a 44% usage rate in that game.
Yeah, and he's an elite scorer, and he's $5,100, and things will only get crazier for him if there's no Cameron Johnson in this game. You have to assume it's an easy slide into the rotation because Ben Simmons is the ultimate 6'10", can play every position guy. Right. So Cam Thomas obviously in play in tournaments. I like Sohan again at 5K. He was really solid in that debut. He's not going to shoot the ball really well. That's probably the one thing you're going to have to live with Sohan, but he's a very good rebounder. He is way too big to be starting at point guard. But he showed in the preseason and now into the regular season, he's going to rack up assists. And I think it's going to be easy for him to play with a guy who's 7'4" and Victor Wembanyama. So I like Sohan and Thomas and Brogdon quite a bit down here.
Under 5K, again, this is where we struggled a little bit. Obviously a lot of these guys didn't have the greatest initial season debuts. Would you give any run back to anybody here, though? Anybody that sticks out to you at the point guard spot for value play this evening?
Yeah, I mean, Killian Hayes is someone we didn't talk about, but he started at the shooting guard, played 30 minutes, and 4 for 12 shooting, very Killian Hayes of him. But 0 for 6 from 3. If that's 3 for 6, we're talking about a guy who probably goes close to 30 fantasy points, right? And as weird as it is, he played significantly more minutes than Jaden Ivey. Will that continue? I don't know, but I would test it in tournaments. And Kobe White, I think if there was a few positives about the Chicago Bulls in the opener, Kobe White played 31 minutes. Love that. 4 for 14 from the floor, still scored 15 points. Like, even in a night, because he can get to the free throw line, he can shoot threes. A guy shot 44% in 2 straight seasons, shoot 28% from the floor. So positive regression coming for Kobe White. I think if there's one flaw in the Toronto defense, it's Dennis Schroeder, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not Scotty Barnes.
We've been attacking Dennis Schroeder for a decade. Exactly where we're at. All right, shooting guard position here up at the top. A couple of our favorite plays here of the night. Cade Cunningham is the cover of today's show. I know he's all over the playbook. He's going to be a lot of things that we are looking to play tonight. $8,800. We were questioning why he was $9,000 on the opening night slate because we weren't sure. Coming off of that injury, they had a kind of a new rotation. We weren't sure how the flow was going to work. The flow worked great. He took 27 shots. He finished with 30 actual with 9 assists, a block and steal, 3 rebounds, went for 51. And then they dropped his price tag, $200 against the Hornets. So I feel like a lot of people should want to play Cade Cunningham tonight. I don't know how popular he'll actually end up being, but he's in my lineups tonight.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the flow of things, John. Maybe we were a little too low on a guy who is now not playing with Bojan Bogdanovic, who's averaged 20 points a game for them, and Jaden Ivey moving to the bench, who we were talking about it last year, beginning of the year, how are they going to coexist, right? Both lottery picks, one's the first overall pick. I think Ivey was 4th or 5th when he was drafted. But now Bojan's hurt, and Jaden Ivey played 17 minutes. So I went in and I looked. Last year, small sample, sure. 11 games in the 12 games, he essentially played 11 games without Bojan and Jaden Ivey last year. Cade Cunningham, John, had a 45% usage rate and averaged 1.58 fantasy points per minute.
Yeah.
Those are insane numbers. Those are numbers that you would see on Luka or see on Jokic or see on guys that are 10K and above. And we're getting Cade here, $8,800 in a really good pace spot. Charlotte last year, top 10 in pace, bottom 10 in defense. One game in, top 10 in pace, bottom 10 in defense. So, I don't necessarily care about the ownership on Cade because I am getting there for sure. He's one of my favorite plays of the night.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was playing him initially before we even, we're taking a look at the rostership here this evening for this slate, just the matchup. We like going up against Charlotte. What do we say about Charlotte? They're either in these ridiculously high scoring games or they just get blown out. Yeah. So either way, the team they're facing is either scoring a lot of points against them or this game is very competitive and you get the full minutes. We also talk about Charlotte generally is that those guys, their own starters just play forever no matter what generally happens with them as well. So liking Cade here this evening for sure. And again, from what we're looking at, it seems like tonight not many people are finding their way to him at that $8,800 price tag. Desmond Bane is someone that got a humongous price bump from the first slate, and rightfully so. No John Morant. You knew the usage was going to be there. He goes from 74 to 86. He's home. He's got Denver.
Yeah.
Are we interested in Desmond Bane? We know what the usage is going to be. We know the shots are going to be there, but do you worry about the matchup here against the Denver Nuggets?
I mean, I'm interested because of what you just said. 36 minutes, 22 shots, hit 5 threes. He obviously ball handled it. He made a lot of plays, 5 assists to go along with 31 points. He's good defensively, 2 steals. When he first got in the league, 3-and-D guy. So now he's a 3 and every. He just is an everything guy.
Yeah.
Interest, yes. Core play like he was the other night, no. So if you get M-Dub and Desmond Bane, I have no problem. I would rather play $500 more Paul George, who I'm really high on tonight. He looked really good in the opener, was kind of limited because they were winning by so much and had to come back in the game. But Paul George is one of those guys too. When he's healthy, he does quite literally everything on the floor and has a fantastic spot against Utah. So I would rather probably get up to Paul George. Cade range than I would Desmond Bane. But if you don't have the money to get to those guys and you're playing a tournament, I'm fine with Desmond Bane.
Yep, I'm with you there. Moving down into the mid-tier range here. Anybody stick out to you? Again, some guys we liked on the opener kind of let us down. Levine, notably, that player. He's still $7,100 though. Do we think we get a bounce back? Because this again feels like a price tag that is just too low.
It's too cheap. It's just not a spot I really love. It's a low total. He has a really tough individual matchup, whether he's being guarded by OG or Scotty Barnes. They're both nightmares for opposing offenses. So I'd rather play at this price tier. I'd rather just play Rozier, who I think is just in a better game environment overall. So he wasn't limited like LaMelo was. He did kind of LaMelo-ish things. I know LaMelo had the double-double, but 24, 6, and 5 for Terry Rozier, that's really good output. So of the two, like in this tier, I'd rather play Rozier. I'm kind of out on Levine.
Okay. Any interest in Miami? I mean, Tyler Hero, thoughts? No.
Derek White is a nightmare. Drew Holiday is a nightmare. It's a tough spot. I think we'll get to maybe a Miami guy that I don't know if you and I agree on, but we'll get to one that we'll talk about that I definitely have interest in.
Let's talk about a former Miami guy, and that is Max Strus. Guy went off, played 39 minutes, hit 7 of 13 threes, 12 rebounds really out of nowhere here, 54 fantasy points, 27 actual. It is safe to say that this is probably the ceiling game for Max Strus.
Probably.
I don't think that all of a sudden Max Strus is going to Cleveland and is the best player in the league. But I mean, he's still a good price tag. So if he's going to be as involved offensively, do you like him against Brooklyn here tonight?
I think personally, and I'm not going to say that Max Strus isn't going to develop into a great player for Cleveland. I'm not. He was a really good player for Miami, very good shooter, exactly what Cleveland needed, right? A guy who can space the floor. Like literally to a T, perfect spot for Max Strus to go.
And you said that. You called that out on the Better Sports Betting Show we did right before the season started. I said Cleveland should find a guy that can help them spread the floor a little bit. And you were like, they went and got Max Strus. And I was like, yeah, but like, can you keep it going from the way he did with he did 7 of 13 from 3. So bingo, right?
I just think like there's somewhere in the middle of what that is, right? Like that, what he did is not going to be like repeatable. Like maybe he does do it at some point in the year because he is a really good shooter at times, but like 7 of 13 is insane. Like 12 rebounds. Evan Mobley didn't grab rebounds.
I think the rebounds could potentially be there again Possibly. As long as Jared Allen is out. Now, let me rephrase. Not 12, right?
Evan Mobley had 6.
I'm not saying double-digit rebounds, but if Evan Mobley is really the only big and the only other guy that he's competing for rebounds against is Okoro, right? Then I think the rebounding could potentially be there for Strus. As a starter last year, playing 32 minutes a night, he did average almost 4 boards a game. Now, again, different team, different role. They had him largely playing as a guard. He's playing as the 3 in this offense. So, I don't think he's a terrible play again. And some people just may be completely off of him because of, they're like, there's no way he could do this again. Same reason why Cam Thomas is coming in at like 2% tonight, because there's no way he's going to go for 50 again. It's like, well, true, but he doesn't have to. If he goes for 30, he's still paying off a $5,600 price tag. So, I think Strus is worth the look here tonight.
I'll say this. I'll split. I won't go as far to say like I'm totally out. I would feel way better about it if Darius Garland sat. How about that? I would feel much more confident with Darius Garland out that a 5x plus performance is repeatable, because I still think like more often than not we're not going to see the performance we saw from Evan Mobley. And more
if Garland is out, that the facilitator role gets changed.
Point Donnie, baby.
Sure, but I wonder if Garland is just a better passer, right? Like it's better to set up Strus there. You'll have to have Karis LeVert probably move into the starting lineup, and how does that change the dynamic with Max there? So I would hope maybe Garland stays, because that's what we saw for Strus in his success. Garland was the guard there, so We talked quickly already. We both like him in tournaments here. Shaden Sharp, we've talked already. Definitely going to be in play tonight, whether he starts or comes off the bench. With Simons already ruled out. Brogdon, the same thing. We like him here, whether he starts or comes off the bench at a good price tag. Where are we going else, though? Anybody else here in this lower 5K, 4K range at shooting guard for you tonight?
It's kind of bleak. Like, obviously, Karis LeVert is someone who it's hard not to look at his stat line and be like, when did Karis LeVert took 17 shots?
Pretty much the only Cav that didn't play well on opening night was Evan Mobley at 70%.
Right.
So,
well, like,
even Isaac Okoro went for like 40.
Well, that's ludicrous. I mean, it's not like LeVert played really well. He just 17 shots is kind of like, that was kind of eye-popping. I assume, that's just what they're going to do. They're going to play small, and you can do that against OKC with Jalen Williams as your 4, right? He's 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". So they can elect to go Karis LeVert for another 30 minutes. So, yeah, that would probably be the guy. I would be pretty all in on Karis LeVert, another guy if Darius Garland sat. Like, I would be pretty all in because he has great eligibility, shooting guard, small forward. He already took 17 shots with Garland playing and played 31 minutes with Garland in the game. And we've seen Karis LeVert be a really good basketball player. He's not 4 for 17 bad. That is off the table again. So Karis LeVert 4,900 would probably almost be it. I have a question. I'll ask this one more guy because I actually liked his price. The more I looked at him, I liked his price on FanDuel too. Alec Burks. He played more than Jaden Ivey off the bench. 25 minutes for Alec Burks off the Detroit bench. And I only bring it up because Detroit needs shooting, right? They need spacing. They don't have Bojan. Jaden Ivey can't space the floor. I think that's why he's coming off the bench. Him and Cade are like replicas of each other, essentially. Alec Burks can space the floor. $4,200, good eligibility, a guy who can score a lot. Would you be interested in a guy coming off the bench 25 minutes in a pretty good game environment?
I mean, we've always talked this way about Alec Burks, right? I mean, if he's going to be a guy that we know can get this kind of role in an offense, he's like someone that can shoot. He didn't have any assists, but we know he's a guy that can also spread the ball around a little bit more in his heyday. So, yeah, I'm fine if you think that's the spot he's going to find himself in this offense. If he's going to play 25 minutes at 4,200. The other guy down here is Moses Moody.
Yeah.
So Moses Moody came into the game, basically one of the first sub rotations for Golden State on opening night. He played the final 4 minutes and 19 seconds of the first, and then he went and played half of the second quarter. He played 7 minutes and 19 seconds of the second quarter, and then didn't really play. He played only 5 minutes remaining for the rest of the game, and that was the end of the third. He played a minute into the fourth, and that was it. However, he came on the floor, and he basically did everything. He hit all of his shots. He grabbed up some rebounds. He had a block and 3 steals. They need some offensive spark a little bit, we think, if this is going to be a high-scoring game. I mean, do we think Moody is somebody worthy of consideration here? A little bit more of a price bump, 3,600 to 4K, but they did lose Jordan Poole's offensive upside. They replaced it with Chris Paul. But, after their guards, it's really Gary Payton as like a defensive player. Any love for Moody here tonight?
Well, since you're on Popcorn Machine, I believe, can you look at Steph Curry's fouls in the first half? Because we know Kuminga was in foul trouble. I'm pretty sure his first half minutes were not solely based on the guys in foul trouble because he was playing really well. Like I think Steve Kerr realized that, like keeping him on the floor, but Kuminga and Curry were both in foul trouble, if I'm not mistaken.
So Curry had 3 fouls in the first half.
I think that there's something to be said for Moody's minutes in the first half because Kuminga was the first. Kuminga came in at the 7-minute mark in the first quarter. And
so Curry only had 1 foul in the first quarter. Moody came in. When Curry came back in, Moody was still on the floor.
Okay.
Moody got subbed out for Clay.
Okay. So that gives him. So the Curry thing is out. I still think it had mostly to do with Kuminga because he had 3 fouls in the first 5 minutes he was on the floor. And maybe we see Kuminga's minutes or the Moody minutes go towards Kuminga in that instance. But, if there's going to be a role for Moses Moody where he approaches 20 minutes, I would gladly have interest because he's a really good shooter. I just am not sure that role exists.
There was like a super random Corey Joseph appearance for only a portion of the second quarter. Chris Paul started the game, got subbed out, came back into the end of the second, end of the first, played the first half of the second, got subbed out for like 4 minutes, and then got subbed back in for Corey Joseph, and that was the end of Corey Joseph's night. So, with the Kuminga thing, I mean, you could be right. I mean, they play different positions, but they do want to get him involved. I wonder if Saric's role had a lot more to do with Kuminga than anything.
Sure.
So
sure.
Something to look at there as we kind of move our way looking for some value. Would you play Bones if he plays tonight? 4,500?
GPPs, he's going to get in there. He's going to shoot.
Yep.
And so.
Love those guys that just get in there and shoot.
Yeah.
Small forward position here. You mentioned liking George already. JT's at 10-5. Again, I think you can play Tatum if you want. Either small forward, power forward. Nobody's really getting there here, but it is their home opener for Boston tonight against Miami. We know that little history that they have. You liked Paul George at 91. You must like Kawhi Leonard at 89.
Yes. I mean, they both were great. Look, dude, you and I both on the Better Shorts betting show went and said, who's our long shot odds to represent the West? We both said the Clippers. We both took to win the championship. We both took the Clippers.
We both had them as our long shot title winners. Yeah.
And they entered the season healthy, and Kawhi went for 42 fantasy points, essentially 43 in 29 minutes, right? He hit all his threes. Kawhi has been a 40% sniper from the 3-point line over the last few years. He does everything on the floor. We already know he's obviously a robot offensively, defensively. If he plays 35 minutes against Utah in a really good pace environment, Utah was top 10 in pace last year, bottom 10 in defense. Who's to say Kawhi doesn't go for 55 fantasy points? I like George a little more because the position eligibility is better. But I have no problem getting to Kawhi for $200 cheaper.
Update here in Darius Garland.
Okay.
Still not clear, but Bickerstaff saying Darius Garland is very questionable to play tonight. So
very questionable. I mean, that's a nightmare.
Not going as far as to rule him out, but instead listing him as a very questionable to play this evening. So if Garland gets ruled out, I think we assume that Karis LeVert moves into that starting lineup here this evening. So, again, love the NBA. We won't know until 30 minutes till, just like we didn't know NEW was starting until at 7 o'clock roster lock time last on Wednesday's slate. We assumed he might have started, but the official word didn't come in until after lineups locked here. Cleveland on the 7:30 game, meaning they don't have to tell us until 7, which, roster's locked. So either prepare for Garland not to play, if you're going to build your lineups here this evening. Safe to say you don't include Darius Garland in your lineups, but that does make Donovan Mitchell a bit more interesting this evening if you just want a tournament dart throw here. Already a good tournament player anyways, but at $9,400 against OKC, if the feeling here is that there's not going to be any Darius Garland tonight, Garland at 9,400 is Mitchell rather is a pretty good pivot probably as a contrarian play in tournaments.
I'm not gonna go out and say that very questionable. I'm not gonna put words in JB Bickerstaff's mouth, but that feels more out than in. I don't know, very questionable. Yeah. What is that? That's horrifying. Imagine all coaches start using very questionable. That's gonna be a nightmare. Donnie Mitch is an elite play in that. I mean, he went for 54 and went nutty with Darius Garland in the lineup. So
he's Donovan Mitchell. I will say, obviously, OKC is a tough team, we're projecting to be a tough team.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly going to give him some love there.
He scored 70 points in a game. He has a 70-point game.
Amen. Back to Kawhi. We're in.
Yes.
Jaylen Brown on FanDuel is $6,800.
Yeah, I saw that. It's crazy.
I might give him a FanDuel look. I mean, he's the third option. He's not thrilled to be the third option, but at 68 or whatever like that, that's not a terrible FanDuel price tag. Mikal Bridges, if there's, I guess, how are you evaluating him? 38 fantasy points on opening night. If Cam Thomas is in the starting lineup, do you downgrade Mikal Bridges here? What do we do?
Yes. Again,
he only took 12 shots. I assume that's because Cam Thomas took 21.
Yeah, I mean, he did get to the line 9 times, right? So give him credit there. Like,
Sure.
he definitely got, there was definitely more aggressiveness than the 12 shots allude to. But yeah, I mean, Cam Thomas taking 25 shots and 11 free throws definitely has something to do with it. I would probably be okay getting to Bridges. It's a great game environment, but it's not something that I'd prioritize.
I mean, I agree with you there. Other mid-tier plays, Keldon nearly triple-doubled. Do we trust it, or is that a Wemby effect here?
I mean, this guy, we couldn't get 6 rebounds and 2 assists last year. He suddenly just completely changed his game. I don't think so.
No, I agree with you. I don't trust it either. Franz is great for cash games if you want to run that out. No problems with me here. I still don't know what's going to go on with the Knicks. RJ Barrett was okay against Boston. He gets a better matchup against Atlanta, but hard for me to figure out that spot. Our guy Michael Porter Jr. had 12 boards on opening night here. Only 2 of 9 from 3. I think he has a better shooting performance here this evening. $5,800 for Michael Porter Jr. here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a definite good spot. The limitation, it's just all a bunch of BS. 30 minutes, really good on the glass. So
yeah, if 30 minutes is the limitation, I feel good about that.
Yeah, if 30 minutes is a limitation for a guy under 6K, for a really good 3-point shooter that shot 2 of 9 from 3 and still gave us 36 fantasy points, it's definitely a high upside play.
Yeah, I like him in tournaments. Again, that game is one to watch. I don't think Harry Barnes goes 11 from 16 from the floor for 33 actual again, but
I have a different forward on the Kings that I really like tonight. His name is not Harrison Barnes.
Where are we going?
Well, we'll get to it at power forward, won't we?
All right. Well, where are we going next then? Are we going back to Gordon Hayward, 57?
Yeah, I think Gordon Hayward's safe. I don't think he's ever a play that I'm willing to be like, yes, Gordon Hayward, elite tournament play, but he only took 8 shots, right? We know this team is not going to be, but the 7 assists, that brings me back to the Utah Gordon Hayward days, right? Or he's the offense is running through him. So I like all the peripheral stats for Gordon Hayward. Obviously, Shaedon Sharpe sits here. 5,300, whether he starts or whether he doesn't, he's going to probably see even a minute increase from there.
Brandon Miller played 25 off the bench.
He did. And they reached for him, dude. They went up and got him instead of Scoot. And it made sense in terms of roster construction because you didn't need another guard in Charlotte. But I don't mind it. He seems very raw. He did not have a good preseason. I think he's going to have a lot of ups and downs. I don't think I would get there tonight. I think I would rather play Sohan, who you can play here, or Karis LeVert, very questionable Darius Garland. And then how about Jonathan Kuminga, who again, I'm saying, I'm going to continue to say it. If Draymond's out, Jonathan Kuminga was the first player off the bench. He checked in at the 7-minute mark in the first quarter. Unfortunately, he played 5 minutes in the first quarter because he picked up 1, 2, 3 fouls in those 5 minutes. But still, he comes out in the second half and he smashes 26 fantasy points at $4,600 in basically, 16 second half minutes. I don't know if you still have the popcorn machine open, but he played all of his minutes in the second half. And if you, this isn't an apples to apples comparison, but he played 5 first half minutes. He played 20 for the game.
Yeah.
That's a 15-minute second half.
Yeah, he played 7 minutes in the fourth quarter. He played 7 minutes in the third quarter. So 14 minutes there.
So, look, math, I'm not saying this is going to be every game. But if you're telling me that Jonathan Kuminga can approach 28 minutes a night without Draymond Green, I'm going to play a lot of Jonathan Kuminga in totals where there's 240 when he's playing in situations without Steph Curry and Chris Paul is passing him the ball. So I love Jonathan Kuminga 4,700, and I don't care who knows, Sean.
Yeah. I see 3 you asking double for Ben Simmons potential. Yes, of course. He's not going to do it with points, but rebounds and assists very much in play here. We talked about Okoro earlier. 31 minutes, had 37 fantasy points. That seems unlikely to repeat itself. I'm not really going to chase the Isaac Okoro points. Our guy Isaiah Joe came off the bench.
He sure did.
It was a bucket once again. I don't know if I can want to chase those points down here either, though. Roddy was the one I mentioned on the show this morning.
Yep.
Again, he was the first big off there, or big. He's their forward off their bench here. Could see him increased minutes. Already played 20 minutes as it is. He would be the dart throw I'd look at under 4K here.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I like David Roddy as more of like, he's not a core value for me, but he would definitely like, I'm okay if I need $3,900 and I end up on David Roddy. Like, that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, Kennard already ruled out for them here. We know the foul trouble that Jaren Jackson could find himself into here. We'll see what happens with this Memphis rotation, but Roddy was the one that at least played 28 minutes off.
Conchar is back just for he missed all preseason with a personal matter and then missed the first game with a personal matter. So that is kind of noteworthy because we've seen John Conchar play a bunch in their rotation. So it is something to monitor if he cuts into Roddy's minutes or not.
Sure. Power forward. Talk to me about some of these guys that we haven't mentioned yet up at the top. We talked Tatum, Siakam. I didn't really like him opening night. Still don't really care for him here.
No, I mean, this is Dennis Schroeder's team, and Dennis Schroeder wants you to know it. Not really in on Siakam all that much. Not in on Markkanen, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The first power forward that I got to, and I'm fine with getting to Tatum, like you mentioned. He played 39 minutes in opening night. He's double-double. Like, he's going to do that every game. I like Julius Randle a bit. There's a bunch you like. You love 34 minutes. You love 22 shots. You love the almost triple-double. You also love, like, he got 45 fantasy points going 5 for 22 from the floor. And now you get
5 from the line.
Dude, 1 for 5 from the line. Like, there's a lot of upside with Julius Randle if we're going to get stat lines like that, where he's going to take 20-plus shots and he's going to, the offense is going to flow through him. I think that's when Julius Randle's at his best. So good matchup against Atlanta. I like Randle. You can definitely get to Porzingis in tournaments. Like, this is obviously a tougher spot, I would say, than it was against the Knicks because Bam is on the other side of the matchup. But if Porzingis is going to stretch the floor the way he did and play offense the way he did.
I mean, did you see the highlights of that game at all? Did you actually watch anything he was doing? I mean, he was just
he's insane. Yeah, and that's what the strength of Boston is going to be. Like, what do you do? Like, do you double Porzingis?
He's the longest player they've had at center since Garnett. And I say long, I mean like arm length long.
Right.
Like Al Horford's played center. Horford's like 6'10". He was fine. Porzingis was very clearly different when those guys were trying to get to the lane with the way he was causing disruption there. So yeah, it could be a tougher spot for him here tonight, but I don't mind going Porzingis here. Wembanyama, speaking of wingspan, got himself into a little bit of foul trouble, but came in at the end of that game and basically just did everything everybody thought he would do at the beginning of the game. So $8,100, a little bit of a price dump on both sides here, but still nobody's playing him. I feel like this is a much better matchup for him against Houston. I have Wemby in some lineups tonight.
Yeah, what did you and I talk about on the pod? Like, he had a massive opening. He had a massive closing. That's all of his fantasy points. Like, literally end and beginning of a game. And then there was just foul trouble riddled in the middle. Like, sure, there's going to be games that there's foul trouble, but, like, that's hard to say that it's going to be every game. He's in a really good spot against, like, Şengün and Jabari Smith, who go to the basket a lot. Like, there's a lot of block upside for Wembanyama tonight. So, yeah, I'm perfectly fine getting there. Again, going to be low owned, like you said, perfectly fine getting to the man, the myth, the legend.
So he's going low rostered here. Player that isn't going low rostered again for the second straight slate here is Jaren Jackson Jr. Now you do have Triple J at home, so blocks and steals props probably in play. He did have 5 there, but 5 fouls as well. He did play 36 minutes, but only gave you 27 fantasy points at 6,600. Now he's 74. And he's going up against Aaron Gordon. He's going up against Nikola Jokic here. I don't know how he doesn't find himself in foul trouble again. It's great that he still played the 36 minutes. They were kind of looking like, well, we don't actually have any backups. No Santi Aldama, no Brandon Clark, no Steven Adams. So we just kind of have to let him play through the fouls at this point. But, he could also just foul out of this game by the third quarter too.
Yeah, ultimately, the Jaren Jackson night is going to depend on who he's guarding, right? Right? I mean, I'm not saying Aaron Gordon couldn't put him in foul trouble because he could, but Aaron Gordon also like largely in their offense works off Jokic lobs or threes, or like he's not like creating himself a lot of the time. If Jaren Jackson comes out and is guarding Nikola Jokic, he's toast. If they decide to put 6'6" Xavier Tillman on Nikola Jokic, then maybe we have a chance, John. I understand the upside for Jaren Jackson at 7,400. That's why I'm not totally out on him in tournaments. I mean, my gosh, 5 blocks again, 2 for 9 is really hard to say he's going to go again, especially, we saw the numbers. He was almost a 20-point per score without Ja last year. So I'm okay getting to Jaren Jackson in tournaments, honestly. It's just going to really come down to like, I think Xavier Tillman has to guard Jokic because I don't think he can.
No, definitely they're to the centers, but I mean, for how long does that last, right?
Well, they're the centers, but like he's 6'6". That's the problem. Like Xavier Tillman
is small. They don't have a big after Adams. Even once Adams went around, like was Brandon Clark their backup 5? He's 6'8".
I know it may be 6'8", maybe 6'8".
Kenneth Lofton might be 7 feet wide, but he's not. It's not 7 feet tall.
I think is Aldama their tallest guy, 6'10"?
It might be, but I don't know.
He's out.
They're gonna need to go find a big somewhere if they're gonna compete in the West like that. So anyway, so Triple J, I don't have any interest. Evan Mobley, a lot of people are going back to the well here. Do you trust a bounce back here? If no Garland now, I mean, just more potential opportunity for him, right?
More reason to play him, right? If there's no Garland, there's just more reason to play him. Look, at the end of the day, Evan Mobley's their only big. Not only big, but like there's no Jared Allen. And he is expected to have that leap. And it's not the best spot with Chet on the other side. Chet is a good defensive player, but Evan Mobley averages well over a fantasy point per minute without Jared Allen on the floor. That number goes up without Darius Garland and Jared Allen. So like, yeah, I'm fine going back to Mobley, and you should be too. Like again, really weird game for Evan Mobley. I think everyone can agree. 6 rebounds, just 11 shots, 10 points. Like the blocks are always going to be there. He's a very good defensive player. I think one of the favorites for defensive player of the year. But yeah, I don't see him having another sluggish performance like that.
Sure. Moving down into the mid-tier range, again, we have some value power forwards. Again, we mentioned Gordon Hayward. John Collins had a really good opening night. Do we think that getting out of Atlanta was what John Collins needed here? Maybe.
He still didn't like shoot all that much. Still just took 11 shots, but he did double-double, was very active on the glass. I'm not against it. It's not like a play that like I'm incredibly bullish on. I think there's a couple players right under him that I really like, but I'm perfectly fine getting to John Collins.
Sure. Amen Thompson here, Oswar Thompson rather here, a guy that had great defensive numbers. Thoughts on him at $5,400?
Yeah, Sar Thompson's fine. 1 for 7 again is probably not something that he's gonna repeat, and he's a really good defender. So I'm not saying he's gonna have 5 blocks, but I also wouldn't put it past him to have multiple blocks and steals every game, just given how good defensively he is. I like him, but man, I have gravitated to Isaiah Stewart a lot, and I've gravitated to Keegan Murray a lot. Those are like really 2 plays I've keyed in here on power forward. Stewart multi-position eligibility. He's gonna have a clash. Like 3 of the top rebounders in the league are reside in this game: Duren, Stewart, and Mark Williams. And Stewart can stretch the floor. They need that. They need the spacing, especially if Cade is going to dish out like he did in game number 1. So I like Stewart.
Both bigs having double-digit rebounds in that game against Miami. I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting, and probably not something that's sustainable. But we've seen people average double-doubles together.
I mean, if Kevin Love is what they have at power forward for 28 minutes, I think a lot of teams might be moving around on Miami this year.
Touche. So I'm definitely on Stewart. I'm definitely in on Keegan Murray as well, John. Like I really like Keegan Murray tonight. 30 minutes in the opener. Most Kings were kind of limited to low 30s because they just got out to a big lead against Utah and maintained it. But we saw Keegan Murray, sniper last year, came out 4 made threes. And I think the leap we're kind of looking for, the rebounds and just kind of peripheral stats in general. he gave us everything. 8 rebounds, and assists, 2 blocks, a steal. Whether that stuff is sustainable, we'll see. But love that their power forward got 8 rebounds. Love that their sniper continued to snipe 4 threes. So in the best game environment on the board, Kings are favored in this game. And you and I were talking about it last night. We kind of just glossed over Keegan Murray, both of us, and we were like, is there anyone that we want to like come back with with Golden State? If I'm not getting to Sabonis, honestly, it's mostly been Keegan Murray because man, like
I looked at him. I guess I was
kid.
worried about the Wiggins perimeter defense potentially going towards him, but maybe that ends up being Harry Barnes that deals with Wiggins instead. And if Murray's getting like Kuminga or something like that, a better, definitely probably a better spot. But like Clay's a decent little perimeter defender, at least in his early days he was. Talked about Kuminga, Jalen Johnson, someone you highlighted ahead of last week's slate. As a guy that played really well in the preseason, wanted to get him going. He entered that game and just went off. Again, another guy that they kind of just rode the hot hand. 29 minutes, 9 of 13 shooting, 7 boards, 2 assists, a block, 2 steals, 21 actual. They took him in the first round a couple of years ago. Yep. $4,700. Do we run it back against the Knicks team here?
I think he's fine for tournaments. After the game, Quinn Snyder had comments about who's going to close and who's not, and it's not always going to be Jalen Johnson. So if he's not as efficient, 9 for 13, maybe it's Saddiq Bey closing. Maybe it's Saddiq Bey, DeAndre Hunter, and Jalen Johnson's left out. So we'll see. I think, it's kind of it's going to be hit or miss with Jalen Johnson this year until one or both are dealt, because I do think there's a chance Atlanta deals one of Saddiq Bey or DeAndre Hunter because they're the same player.
Sure. We talked to Grant Williams on the show this morning. Guy played 35 minutes, $4,700. We in?
He needs to make his shots. Isn't that not what Grant Williams is going to take? I mean, 11 shots is good. If we're going to get 11 shots into Grant Williams this year, a game, that's great.
Sure.
Do I think that's going to be the case? No. Can it be? Sure. The threes are where Grant Williams is going to make his money, and the defense. Yeah. He's obviously a 3-and-D guy. That's why they brought him in to replace the Finney-Smith, loss that they traded away last year. So, yeah, I mean, look.
I was just more so encouraged by the minutes. 35 minutes out of the game is not what I expected for Grant Williams here.
I kind of did, because they gave him all that money. Like, in the sign and trade, they gave him a lot of money. They gave him $60 million, I think it was, maybe $50 million. So I kind of expected him to be the starting power forward from day one. I'm okay with it. He just needs to make his shots. I would play Kevin Love over him.
I was going to say, the chalk value power forward tonight's Kevin Love. I am terrified of this matchup.
Sure.
He played 28 minutes against Detroit. He had the double-double. That's all fine and dandy. His defensive assignment in this game is either going to be Kristaps Porzingis or Jason Tatum.
Yep. It is.
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to be able to keep him on the floor. I think they're going to have to take him off.
There is definitely a chance.
There's a difference between defending Isaiah Stewart, which he didn't really do a great job doing that in that game against Detroit, and having to defend Tatum or Porzingis in this game.
You're not wrong, but where I could see Kevin Love, there's a few scenarios where I see Kevin Love still playing 24 plus minutes. One, Miami plays zone a lot, so Spoelstra can just go to zone, right? They did it against Boston, confused Boston in the postseason literally last year. I'm sure Boston and Missoula prepared for that all offseason. Right?
Yeah, they got Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah, they got Kristaps Porzingis, right. Also, Haywood Highsmith, someone that is firmly in the Miami rotation, out. Caleb Martin in the rotation, likely still limited, only played 19 minutes, and is still, although probable, on the injury report coming into this game.
Are they going to play Jaquez here?
I mean, they could, and he is a athletic dude. I'm just saying, I think there's a scenario where Kevin Love is still playing 24 to 25 minutes, which I think is more than fine, especially because he can stretch the floor and he can rebound the basketball quite well. So I'm perfectly fine getting to Kevin Love in whatever format you want to get to Kevin Love. But that's not me stating I do understand where you're coming from. Sure. Boston is a nightmare for everybody, including Kevin Love.
Right. Last two punt power forwards I'll just throw out there and get your reaction to. Dario Saric, again, may have played these minutes due to the Kuminga fouls, but we also talked a lot about how Kerr likes him, and him and Chris Paul have a great relationship, and they don't have Draymond Green, so they need to back up someone to play that 5 and 4 position. And they had a time where Dario Saric was out there as the 5. So 20 minutes could be on tap for him again. He did take 11 shots. He had 7 rebounds. All great to see. And then there's no bigger Jonathan Isaac fan than you and I think, on the face of this earth. Happy to see him healthy. Happy to see him on the floor. 14 minutes, I feel like, should only be the beginning. I don't know if he ever cracks 20 because of the rotation that they have. They're not going to play him over Franz or Banchero or Wendell Carter, I don't think. But guy got on the floor, 11, 4, 2 blocks. I mean, if you're playing the Big 15 tonight, do you throw in a Jonathan Isaac for $3,700?
No, but I feel like we're getting close.
I
feel like we're getting close. I could see a scenario down the line if Jonathan Isaac were to stay healthy for most of the year where he is starting over Jalen Suggs and they just go big with Franz at the 2, Banchero at the 3, Isaac at the 4, and Wendell Carter at the 5. I could see a scenario where that plays out because Jonathan Isaac is one of the most athletic 6'11", 7-footers we have in the NBA.
100%. All right, let's move on over then to the center spot. I know we're running a little long today, but that's fine. We're doing it for you. It's a big slate. It's a Friday. Let's close this out in style here. Center position. Joker's at 11-6 gets Memphis. I've already talked about it. I think it's a great spot. Tillman, too small. Jaren Jackson, too foul happy. Sabonis light is right below, or Jokic light, though, is right below him. Domantas Sabonis, 10-2, highest game total on the board. Went for 51 on opening night. You can play him at power forward on FanDuel tonight, which I think is a cheat code.
Yeah,
both of those guys, for me, I think you can get there. More people are playing Sabonis than Jokic here this evening. So you have the money. You can figure it out. You can play either way. We've discussed Porzingis, Wemby, Jackson, Mobley, a lot of these guys here. Şengün, 7K. Do we run it back for Şengün here?
Yeah, I like Şengün. And all the other guys you mentioned, like obviously you can get to Sabonis, Jokic, whatever. I like Şengün. I mean, you brought it up on the pod. Without Kevin Porter, he averaged over 5 assists per game. And right then and there, like Kevin Porter's gone off this team. 6 assists in the opener. They got blown out. He didn't play the final 8 minutes of the game. No starter did. What if he played 4 of those or 5 of those minutes? Like double-double is in play. Inch closer to a triple-double. He averaged a block and a steal last year, so like positive regression coming in that instance. I like Şengün quite a bit. One of my favorite 7K plays of the slate, one of my favorite mid-tier plays of the slate. San Antonio didn't defend at all. Derek Lively came in the second half and dominated on the interior, and I think Şengün can do a lot of that same stuff Lively did. So,
Sure.
yeah, I like Şengün quite a bit at 7K.
Yep. Guys in the mid-tier, I know you and I are high on quite a few of them. Lively came in, started the second half, dominated, double-double. Going up against Brooklyn, who's going to be without Nick Claxton here tonight, a really good defender. Now they're going to be going with Daron Sharp and maybe some combination of Giles and Trent Watford tonight. So I think we're both in on that play as well. Mark Williams, though, at $5,800 against Detroit feels like a spot where you and I are both aligned on.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to like kind of just like both centers in this game. Mark Williams, dominant, was like, what was the split going to be? Comes out, he's in a massive split versus Nick Richards. 30 minutes, dominates, 13 and 15 double-double. He's really, really active defensively, 3 steals and a block. I don't think the steals will always be there, but the blocks will. He's not going to give you much in the assist category, but he is always near the glass. He does not leave the paint. Love Mark Williams because Jalen Duren doesn't really leave the paint. So right. I think that bodes well for Mark Williams because, they're just
Duren's a little bit cheaper, $200 less. We talked Stewart at $5,300 down here. And then we go down to the value. Unless if there's somebody you want to touch on, feel free to give them a shout out. But we have Daron Sharp, again, a guy that everybody is putting into their lineups tonight. It's why nobody's really playing Jokic or Sabonis on DraftKings. He's $3,300. He's expected to start. I just saw a tweet that talked about in his career as a starter. Yeah, now here, I actually think this is a pretty key point. Now, I don't know the depth per se at the time of the Nets here, but in his career as a starter, he's only averaged 21.9 minutes per game. in his career as a starter, but 10 points, 8.7 rebounds, over a block.
Yeah,
So
fantasy point per minute monster.
Fantasy point per minute monster. But it goes to lend whoever is going to be active and potentially the backup center in this game could just be seeing equal playing time, or maybe it's a 25 to 22 minute split with Sharp here. So you have him there, and then I hope it's Trendon Watford. We talked Watford on the show this morning. Last season for Portland, he was really good.
He was,
and I was surprised that they just kind of let him go. If he finds himself active, I would definitely give some looks here to Trendon Watford tonight as a pivot off of Day'Ron Sharp if you wanted to. Again, Sharp could find himself in foul trouble with Luka just driving at him for the first 15 minutes of this game, Kyrie driving at him for the first 15 minutes of this game. So, if you want to be different tonight and everybody and their brother is playing Day'Ron Sharp, if you can identify who might be the backup tonight, Giles or Watford, I might lean in that direction.
Yeah, that's probably the key, what you just said. Like, listen to what Jock Vaughn has to say before the game, ultimately, because if Jock Vaughn gives us word that, Giles is the backup or Watford's the backup, I am perfectly fine playing one of them. Like, I would perfectly fine going in tournaments. Now, if you're playing cash, play Day'Ron Sharp and just that's your plug and move on. Don't overthink that. Because like you said, even if he only plays 20 minutes and he goes 10 and 8 and a block, he's crushing his 3K price tag. But in a tournament, if we do find out who the direct backup would be, I'm perfectly fine pivoting.
I agree with you 100% here. All right, James, let's get to our Call of Fame plays here of the day. Going to give you the guys that we are locked in on for tonight's slate here. Give me a moment to pull it all up. Call of Fame. Here we go. Look at that nice little graphic we got going on here. GPP lock of the night for you is Cade Cunningham. He is $8,800 over on DraftKings. We talked about this matchup going up against the Charlotte Hornets. Great spot for him there. For me, I'm going to Domantas Sabonis. Again, love that game value total. The matchup going there, 240 total going up against Golden State. And the fact that nobody's on him, I kind of like that. I like that no one's really playing him tonight in the tournaments here. Cash game lock for you. You have Day'Ron Sharp. Again, makes a lot of sense given the upside value that he's bringing at that cheap price tag. For me, I went Chris Paul on DraftKings. Again, $6,600. You're getting exposure to that high game total game there. Good fast pace. Nearly doubled, added some rebounds. We know what he can do defensively here. And I think he's going to shoot a little bit better tonight. So I like Chris Paul tonight in cash games. For value plays, you went Keegan Murray here tonight. Why don't you recap a little bit what you like about Keegan?
Yeah, I mean, look, Keegan Murray broke the NBA record for most threes made as a rookie. He shot over 40% from three. And the one question that we kind of had about Keegan Murray was, well, he scores, but what about the peripheral stats? And he's a starting power forward for a team that, Sabonis, does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of everything else, but 8 rebounds he comes out, which is 3 higher than his average was last year. And I think that answered questions right away. And this is the best game environment on the board. It's a really good price tag on a slate that not great value anywhere. Keegan Murray fits in like a glove at power forward. Unfortunately, he's not. I wish there was a little small forward eligibility. I think like it is on FanDuel, but getting exposure to the, arguably best game on the board. At least that's what Vegas is telling us with the over-under currently sitting at 238 or 237.5, depending where you look. I love Keegan Murray in basically any format you want to use him in.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I went Day'Ron Sharp as my value lock. And again, guys, those of you tuning in just now, these were picked out obviously before the Anthony Simons news.
Yes.
We are very much in on Malcolm Brogdon and Shaedon Sharp here tonight. Whichever one starts certainly will fit some lineup builds, but I think you can play both tonight. They're under they're $5,200 and $5,300 on DraftKings, so both of those are in play. Favorite stacks, you like Golden State Sacramento. I think a contrarian stack to that game is Brooklyn Dallas. That's a game that actually has seen the point total rise since the open here, so trending up towards that. Fades of the day, you like Lauri Markkanen as a fade. I'm going Jaren Jackson as a fade.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't like the price on Markkanen, $9K on DraftKings, and I don't know if it's directly correlated to Jordan Clarkson starting, but 15 shots for Laurie. This is a guy who was taking a lot of shots for them last year. Love the rebounds, 10, but what if Walker Kessler plays 30 minutes? Is John Collins and Lauri Markkanen both grabbing double-digit rebounds? I'd have a hard time believing that, and I do think Walker Kessler is someone that's going to be extended, especially in a game against Ivica Zubac, who just had 37 rebounds in his first game. So I think there's a lot of negative things on the marketing side, and I like him as a player, and he has a lot of upside. But 9K in a really tough matchup against the Clippers, and a lot of not great things for that Utah team in general, pointing towards a fade for me.
Yep. And then our favorites under 7K. We both went with the opposing centers for each other. You liked Mark Williams. I went Jalen Duran. I think they both come through with double-doubles here tonight. Good value at the center position. Breaking news here. Cam Johnson officially ruled out this evening for the Brooklyn Nets. So that will certainly be impacting the starting lineup for Brooklyn this evening. We'll see if Cam Thomas enters the starting lineup, if they shift over Ben Simmons there into the small forward spot, or if somebody else finds their way. But either way, Cam Johnson being ruled out tonight, again, going to reshape the way Brooklyn's rotation will work. Before we jump out of here, again, we do want to give a shout out to our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Right now, you can go to fantasyalarm.com/underdog, use promo code ALARM, and you get up to a $500 deposit match with your first deposit here. Scan the QR code on the screen or go to fantasyalarm.com/underdog. Here are our 5 picks for Underdog Fantasy this evening. Get yourself a chance to 20x your money, even a little bit of a boost. I have the Chris Paul higher than half a double-double. That's at 1.5x over at Underdog Fantasy tonight, so you get a little bit of a boost on your payout. We like Cade Cunningham higher than 20.5 field goal attempts. Luka Doncic higher than 7.5 assists. DeAndre Ayton higher than 10.5 rebounds. Chris Paul with the double-double. And Max Strus here higher than 3.0 3-pointers made. Going to be taking a lot of threes here this evening. So again, lock those plays in if you're not yet over at Underdog Fantasy. Again, out fantasyalarm.com/underdog. Use promo code ALARM. Get yourself up to a $500 deposit match with your first deposit there. James, let's build a lineup here for the friends at home, and then we can talk about another cool thing we got going on here this year with our Friday Fantasy Alarm contest that we're going to be doing with our members and with the viewing audience here that tune in to our live stream here as well. So let's get a lineup built for the folks. Where are we plugging in first? Aaron Sharp, I imagine, at the
yeah, let's play Sharp. Let's play Sharp at center.
Sharp at center. Did you plug Luka?
Yeah, we could definitely plug Luka. Now, I guess do you prefer Brogdon? Do you prefer this news with Cam Thomas? Because Cam Thomas and Malcolm Brogdon are essentially the same price.
I think you could play both.
I think I would. My guess is Cam Thomas still comes off the bench and they just start Royce O'Neal. That would be my guess. But like, obviously Cam Johnson being out does not hurt Cam Thomas.
No, it does not. So, again, I think both are in play. I would play them both. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything negative to say.
Brogdon, Thomas at guard. 6250 here at the forwards and a util remaining. What do you want to do? Cade, I would imagine, is going to be our util here.
Yeah, I would like Cade, yeah.
Where is Cade?
Shooting guard. He's a shooting guard, only 8,800.
Yeah, I'm in the util. Here we go. All right, $5,400, small forward, power forward, and forward. We were in on Kuminga this evening.
Yep.
Given the Struss news, or the Garland news, I kind of like Max Struss here, 56. What are your thoughts?
Not for me, but we can if that's if you have a strong conviction, play him.
We have a power forward and a forward. What are you feeling tonight?
I mean, if we're talking Stewart? Forward in general, Stewart, Murray, Sohan. I'd probably rather play Karis LeVert than Max Strus, but any of those four probably over.
Well, you had Keegan Murray in your Call of Fame here. We have a $6,300 forward to close that out. Do we think Ben Simmons gets a bump? Michael Porter Jr. at $5,800 also looking pretty good.
Yeah, either one works perfectly fine.
Let's plug in MPJ. We're big Michael Porter Jr. fans. We got Luka Doncic in that lineup as well. So, guys, an example lineup for everybody: Luka Doncic, Malcolm Brogdon, Jonathan Kuminga, Keegan Murray, Day'Ron Sharpe, Cam Thomas, Michael Porter Jr., Cade Cunningham. $500 left over for your GPP tournaments. And speaking of GPP tournaments here, I want to give a invite to everybody who's tuning in to our stream. On Fridays, we do a family DraftKings contest. If you are tuning in to that, the link is now in the description here. You can join. It's a $5 DraftKings contest. Play with myself, James Grande, and other members of the Fantasy Alarm family here today. Get in that contest. Give your chance to compete against us. And if you haven't already become a member of the Fantasy Alarm family, now's your time to do it. That's the wrong QR code. There it is. Here's the QR code we want. Less than $16 a month for the annual package here. Go to fantasyalarm.com/lock. Promo code LOCK at checkout. Get our annual subscription for less than $16 a month. Our month-to-month package is about $40 a month. So you're getting tremendous savings here, getting the annual package today. So again, scan that QR code. Go to fantasyalarm.com/lock and check out everything we have to offer over at Fantasy Alarm for all of our sports. It's not just NBA that you get access to. You get access to NHL, NFL, NASCAR, MMA, PGA, NBA, MLB, all the way through next year, which means our fantasy football draft guides included, our fantasy basketball draft guide, our fantasy baseball draft guide, all the stuff that is behind the paywall over at Fantasy Alarm is included with the All-Pro package annual subscription, which you can get for today for less than $16 a month. James, it's been fun. Good luck tonight in your tournaments. Good luck to you, everybody here as well that is tuning in to the show. We'll be back on Monday, getting you all ready for another week of NBA DFS action.